You're not going to get good at it unless you do it and do it and do it. I would not be so cocky as to do the things. Think about the biggest changes that have happened. You will find that 90% of them happen by chance. Technically, that makes America the bastard child of India.
Hi there. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Kumar Haran. I'm an executive coach, speaker, and author. Stories That Shift is a series of intimate conversations with CXOs and practitioners about what makes them tick. Stories are not what we say. Stories are who we are. I have a very special guest on the pod today. Somebody who I would only describe as a slasher, a multi-hyphenate, and somebody who dons so many hats that I don't know, how to, describe him better. I have with me Papa CJ. CJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, sir. What I found really interesting is that normally when Jay runs this podcast, he says, I have CXOs. But now he realized he had me, so he had to say practitioners as well.
CJ, just for that, I'll play you all the intros of the earlier shows. But, CJ, this is really fascinating. Your journey of traversing different paths of, graduating out of one of the finest colleges on the planet and working and then stand-up comedy and now executive coaching. Do take us on this journey.
I'd love to be able to say that it's a planned journey, but I find it's not just me, but all of us as human beings. If you look back at your life and think about the biggest changes that have happened, you will find that 90% of them happen by chance. Mm-hmm. Yet we spend so much time making plans. I think what's the way my life has shaped up is, so firstly, the first half of this quote you would have heard, which is that creativity is connecting the dots, but curiosity is collecting the dots.
Lovely.
And I am an avid dot collector, whether it is reading books, whether it is conversations with people, whether it is being open to meeting people I've never met before from diverse backgrounds. And I find as I keep learning more about a subject, that dot becomes a circle. And the magic lies in the areas where those circles intersect. Because that is the space where your knowledge is unique, and that is your USP. And if you are able to follow that path, you are able to create something new. So for example, one of my signature sessions is something that's called a comedian's guide to communication strategy. Now, you probably have millions of people who teach communication. But can you find a stand-up comedian who can scientifically break down the art of international stand-up comedy, draw those lessons out from stand-up comedy, and help you apply that in a corporate context to your organization or your personal self? So that's the unique space. So I find that a lot of the path that I have taken has happened by chance, but it's because of an attitude that is curious and open to experimenting and trying and failing that has helped me find different things along the way. And I continue to keep doing that.
Amazing. Because curiosity is one of the topmost values that I connect with as well. And the part about you that you bring to a leadership conversation, a coaching conversation, or a group facilitation workshop is in a sense a culmination of your of different experiences, different inspirations that you've had, right?
Yeah.
And how you weave them together is probably the magic, and that's an area only you can do it.
I think so. Let's be honest, you pick up a stone and throw it in any direction, you'll probably hit somebody who calls themselves a coach.
Right. Absolutely.
So what is the value that you bring? And I find that it's very rarely the what. It's almost always the how. Especially if you look at senior leadership. One, they don't want somebody walking in and pretending to know their business better than them. We don't. Right? They also don't want theory.
Correct.
The answers are almost always with them. Where I think you become unique is what is the process that you use to help them find those answers for themselves. And I think in an age of limited attention spans, like the one we live in now, what stand-up comedy gives you are superpowers when it comes to coaching. If you think about it, when you start doing stand-up comedy, you get 5 minutes, right? Not today as an experienced comic, I get a 90-minute show.
Sure.
But when you start, you get 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, you don't have the luxury of telling a 3-minute long story. Because then in your 5 minutes, you'll have 1.5 punchlines.
Gotcha.
So you've got to have a punchline. I mean, I used to have at least 20 punchlines, right? I still remember I had spreadsheets with jokes.
Beautiful.
I would remove every single extra word that I did not need. I know I have a sequence about a beggar, which is 90 seconds long. There are 13 punchlines. There is a laugh every 7 seconds. So you're removing every single extra word of fat and you're grabbing and retaining attention and getting people over to your point of view. Now, that skill set, if you take it out of comedy and apply it to coaching, is magic. You know, I mean, last year I was on a retainer with the CEO of a very large firm where I was helping him with his communication. And what's interesting is when people normally invite me to help with that, they think, oh, he'll help us bring some humor into it. But 95% of the value that I add is in structure, in making it more impactful, in using emotions. I mean, what are stories? Data plus emotions.
Absolutely.
Right? Can you take your audience, whether it is your shareholders, whether it is your employees, whether it is your customers, down an emotional journey and with the right stories and get your point across and be impactful? So that's a lot of the space I help with as well. But I mean, we can talk about this for hours on end. There is so much that stand-up comedy has taught me about life and work. And I find that applies to every aspect of everything that I do.
Brilliant. So which brings me to question number 1. And I'm intensely curious about comics because I hold them in very, very high stead. I think of them as social commentators. I think of them as somebody who shows the truth, where very few people are scared of walking and moving in that direction, and observers of the human condition.
I'm tempted to interrupt you. Stand-up comics can be all of that, but they don't have to, right? Very often as comedians, we are told, oh, you're a comedian, you should talk about this.
No. Yeah.
No.
Gotcha.
Right? I might choose to do potty jokes.
Sure.
Right. That's my choice.
Sure.
Right. So yeah.
No, absolutely. Good distinction.
But I will tell you one thing. Firstly, is your audience for this Indian or international? Because I'll customize the jokes.
Predominantly Indian.
Okay. So what happens as comedians is that we go through a journey, right? When you start off, you want the confidence that you can make people laugh.
Excellent.
So you'll go for the easy joke, right? So the kind of joke I would do is, I live in Delhi. And as somebody who lives in Delhi, we don't understand the language that people speak in Mumbai. You know, we call it bread, they call it pav. We call it pyaz, they call it kanda. We call it a servant quarter, they call it a 2 BHK. Right? Now, I know that you're going to laugh at that. Easy joke, I've got you.
Yeah.
Then, over the course of time, we continue to do observational comedy. So just like you look at the world, we look at the world as well. But we see things slightly differently. So one of the jokes I used to do is that, you know, I grew up in Calcutta. I remember taking driving lessons in London. And this instructor says, oh, you Indians, why don't you drive in a straight line? I said, listen, I'm not used to it. I'm from Calcutta. In England, you drive on the left of the road. In Calcutta, we drive on what is left of the road. Right? Then what happens is we have this microphone. People are listening to us. There's this sense of power you get, right? So you start getting cocky. You'll use bad language. You'll pick on positions of authority. You'll do the kind of jokes that make you feel intelligent, right? Where you're not necessarily getting a laugh, but you're getting applause. I'll give you an example. I went to the US under the Trump administration. I had this beard. I get to immigration. The officer looks at my passport, looks at my beard. He says, you know what? You Indians, you're a mistake. In fact, India is a mistake. I said, come on, officer. As an American, you should be grateful to us. He says, why? I said, well, Because when Christopher Columbus discovered America, he was looking for India. So to be perfectly honest, you are the fucking mistake. Right? Technically, that makes America the bastard child of India. Right? If you look at that joke, what's there? I've used bad language. Right? I feel power. I can say these words on stage. I've cracked a joke where I said Christopher Columbus discovered America when he was looking for India. There's a pause, and then the audience gets it. And they, oh yeah, oh, so how intelligent, clap, 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 clap. But eventually what happens is that you're operating in a profession that has no rules, no guidelines, no social norms, no boundaries. So that's why the first line of my book says that stand-up comedy, like many other art forms, is an outward expression of an inward journey. You're forced to look inwards. What are my values? What do I find funny? What are the things that matter to me? Eventually, you don't even care about the audience. If you think about the more famous comedians, Chris Rock, Jerry Seinfeld, Russell Peters, they're not going to change what they do depending on who's in the room. I mean, Chris Rock might if Will Smith is there. Right? But eventually, they call it finding your own voice, right? And they say it takes you 10 years to do that. And after that, you don't even care about who's in the room. Your audience finds you. If for the people for whom it doesn't work, they will weed themselves out automatically. Now, the beauty of this process, and when you speak about comedians and the truth, you get very comfortable with being authentic and being truthful. And you're like, this is my truth. If this works for you, fine. If it doesn't work for you, also fine. I respect that. Now, the beauty of this attitude is that and I'm not talking about, some people use authenticity as a crutch to be rude to people.
Oh, I hear you.
I'm like this.
I hear you.
That's not what I'm talking about. But this attitude translates into the rest of your life as well. And I find with relationships, I mean, I live in Delhi, which is not known to be the most authentic city in the world. But when people find out that this guy is perfectly happy sitting barefoot, in a t-shirt having a conversation, they realize initially things, they may see you as blunt, but eventually they realize that they don't need to play that game with you. And as a result, they are comfortable being their authentic selves with you. And so your relationships are a lot more real. One of the best parts of my profession is whether it's a 16-year-old or a 75-year-old, I'm cracking the same dirty jokes with them. They're cracking the same dirty jokes with me. Our relationship is a very one-on-one relationship. Today I find, at least 4 times a week, I'm connecting different people from very diverse networks who may be able to help them out. And I'm able to open those doors and get the right people in the room together. Why? Because that person knows this guy has no ulterior motive from me. He's a comedian. What does he want from me? Nothing, right? So I think when people see, oh my God, my brain is going into another direction about your intent, right? When we talk about comedy and offense, a lot of it has to do with intent. Let's not go there. It's a very long conversation. But when people can see that you're just being real with them, they're comfortable being real with you. And that leads to a much richer life. And I'm grateful to stand-up comedy for that.
Amazing. I don't know if it's a loaded question or not, but everybody has a choice and a sieve through which they say this is the highest form of comedy, right? For somebody, it could be Chappelle, somebody Jerry, somebody it could be Ricky Gervais.
Yeah.
But my consumption of comedy has also taken me on a journey of facing some truths and some perspectives which might not be popular, but which makes me stop and think.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful space to be in.
There's a wonderful quote by Mary Hirsch. She says that humor is like a rubber sword. You can make a point without drawing any blood. When I perform in colleges and I get banned from 80% of the colleges I perform in, I go to the students and I speak to them and I talk to them and I ask them about what are the things that they feel are unfair on their campuses. There was one campus I performed at in Noida where if you're a foreign student, you can smoke on campus.
Whoa.
If you're Indian, you cannot.
Jeez.
How can that even be legal? It makes my blood boil.
Sure.
There's a campus in the south where if you shake hands with a person of the opposite sex for longer than 3 seconds, it is considered a public display of affection. There is a 500 rupee fine for that.
Jeez.
Right? An engineering college. Now, my problem with these things is that for 4 years, they train the minds of the students to not question, right? And not question ridiculous rules like this.
Yeah.
What are they going to invent or discover or create when you're just training them to follow rules, right? Now, I go and I question. And then the faculty doesn't like it because it hurts their egos and I get banned. But very often a change is made. In fact, now I have learned how to not get banned.
Oh, that's interesting. Do tell.
I will tell you this. I was performing at the RV College of Engineering in Bangalore. And now what I do is I ask the faculty first and get their agreement on principles. So RV College, I asked them, I said, there were 3 faculty members in the front, 1,000 students. I said, I asked the faculty members, do any of you have daughters? 2 of them said, yes, we do. I said, do you think the cost of education should be the same for boys and girls? They said, yes, of course, it should be the same. Nobody should have to pay more. I said, do you think boys and girls should have access to equal resources when it comes to education? Yes, yes, absolutely. I said, do you think that that girls are safer on campus, on your college campus, or on the streets of Bangalore? Oh, definitely safer on the college campus. I said, okay. You said that they should have access to equal resources. I said, but the boys can use the library on Sunday, the girls cannot. Is that fair? Right? You said that the girls are safer on campus, but the boys have a hostel on campus. When classes finish, the girls have to get into an auto, get on the streets of Bangalore and go for 5 kilometers to get to the hostel. Right? Then I also said the cost of that auto ride is 32 rupees one way, which is at least 20,000 bucks a year. How is their cost of education not higher than the boys? Right? And then I said, the reason I'm asking you these questions is because in 20 years from now, it will be your daughters asking you exactly these same questions. I got an email from a student from RV College of Engineering 3 days after I did that, 3 years after I did that show, saying they have just built a hostel for girls on campus.
Man.
So,
boom.
Yeah. Can you bring a change? Yes, you can. I have many other examples of when such changes happened, but this I thought was one of the more
it's
impactful
amazing.
ones.
I mean, truth telling and showing a mirror is a very, very important aspect of intelligent comedy in that sense. Right?
But also, it's different for different comedians.
Of course.
I have no problem teasing my audience. I have no problem embarrassing my audience. I'm not hurtful.
Oh, lovely.
Right? That's not who I am.
Yeah.
I'm not there to get on stage and say, I know better. Right? I'm there to be cheeky, to be naughty, to show them a mirror.
Gotcha.
Right? So that's who I am. Is there a right or wrong way? Absolutely not. I'm not arrogant enough to say that there is. To each their own, but this is what works for me.
So is there an on-stage, off-stage persona that you have with a little bit of a variation, or is that exactly the same?
There's definitely a variation.
I love it.
There's definitely a variation. I would not be so cocky as to do the things. I mean, it's Clark Kent and Superman.
You love,
it's
right?
Clark Kent and Superman.
Yeah.
Because on stage, you cannot mess with me. Off stage, I'm not interested in picking a fight. I don't need the attention. I'm not a cocky guy. I would much rather listen than talk.
Gotcha.
On stage, not a chance. I'm trying to think of this. So there's a client of mine, and I'm not going to tell you his name. I'll get into a lot of trouble, right? And we were doing a show which I was hosting, and he said, CJ, this time, no, I'm going to screw you on stage. And I said, sir, please don't. Say whatever you like off stage. But if you come after me on stage, then I will be obliged to respond.
Gotcha.
And I say that with all due respect. He said, yeah, I've seen many kids like you. We'll see. And he was the chairman of board of this company. So, okay. And this was the second year that I was hosting this event for this person, right? So anyway, I'm supposed to introduce him onto stage. So I show this photograph of a parrot on the screen behind. And I say, this is my pet parrot. And when I went to buy this parrot, I went to this Mulchand flyover, and I asked this guy, I looked at the first parrot, I said, how much for this parrot? He said, sir, this parrot is 30,000 rupees. I said, 30,000 bucks for a parrot? Like, why?
Yeah.
He said, sir, this parrot worked in the IT industry. Very good technical skills. I said, okay. Looked at the next parrot. I said, how much for this parrot? So this parrot is 60,000 rupees. 60,000 bucks? I said, why? So this parrot also worked in the IT industry. Very good technical skills, very good relationship skills as well. Okay. So I looked at the next parrot. The next parrot is wearing a pinstripe suit, gold rimmed glasses, Mont Blanc cufflinks, talking on the mobile phone. I said, how much for this parrot? So this parrot is 5 lakhs. 5 lakhs for a parrot? I said, what the hell does this guy do? He says, sir, to be honest, nobody knows what this parrot does. But these other 2 parrots, they call him the chairman of the board. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome the chairman of the board. Right? But I was trying to set him up for success.
Got it.
And saying, and he is going to show you why he is no parrot.
Oh,
right?
I like it.
Because he was going to give this presentation, right? So I was setting him up. This guy gets on stage and he says, you know, CJ, the reason we invited you was because this time we wanted some jokes on stage.
Oh, okay.
Now he was trying to imply that the previous year when I was invited, I didn't crack any jokes on stage. Now I'm a comedian. Within 1/10 of a second, I had a reply. In the next 10th of a second, I told myself, CJ, this guy gives you like 3 shows a year. You better keep quiet, man. And in the next 10th of a second, blah, right? So here's how it goes. He said, you know, CJ, the reason we invited you was because this time we wanted some jokes on stage. I looked at him straight in the eye. I said, sir, why do you think I invited you up? Oh my God! The audience was pissing themselves, right? And I think in that moment, he was so mentally prepped for his presentation. He didn't realize like how badly he had been burnt. He caught me after the show. He's like, you fucked me, man. You fucked me. But you were really good. You were really good. I'm like, so yeah, I don't know where this started off from, but I thought it's a...
No, but I think it's brilliant, right? Because there is a lot of conversations around authenticity, and more often than not, sometimes it's not understood in the right way in leadership parlance, right?
Uh-huh.
Authenticity does not give you a free ticket to being rude or being nasty or, under the guise of, what you see is what you get, mate. I don't have a facade. I don't put on niceties. I am who I am, and you please accept me the way I am, kind of a thing. And which is why I go back to the stage and I talk about on-stage behavior and off-stage behavior and say that does not necessarily mean this is inauthentic.
Yes.
Now, who is the real you? Is the on-stage Papa CJ the real you or the off-stage Papa CJ is the real you?
Yeah.
And I would guess both of it is you, right? There are aspects, there are parts of you that you reveal to a certain audience and the parts of you that you reveal to another audience.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important distinction that leaders also have to understand and not get into this authenticity, understanding and internalization in a very different manner.
Yeah, see, the on-stage person, at least with comedy, is just a larger version, a grander version of yourself. But it's like Shakespeare, and I think Elvis said it as well, right? All the world's a stage, and each of us must play a part. Yeah. So very often there are roles that you play, right? If you're a mother and with your friends you use foul language, you can't just in front of your 7-year-old start using the same because you're being authentic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're playing a part.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to be authentic to the role that is being played.
Lovely. Right? Lovely.
So
I tell them leadership is a performance. When you're a leader, you're performing. Yeah. Which is why Walt Disney does not, they do auditions. They don't have job interviews. And I think it's something that something from the performance space that we can take over to leadership.
Yeah. And the other interesting difference, if I may, is that, and I want to tell you another story about silence, just because it's a great story and before I forget. When I'm a comedian, I'm the center of attention. When I'm a coach, it is completely the opposite. the less I talk, the more successful a
100%.
session is. In fact, I try not to even stand in front of them. I'll stand on the side or,
Yep.
But the point I wanted to tell you was about the power of silence. You learn this when you're doing stand-up. I remember once, this was in London, I was doing a college comedy show. And the audience was going mental. They were banging the chairs, they were clapping, they were cheering. The next day, I did a very posh art center sort of gig. And people were smiling and they were nodding their heads. And I thought, I'm having the worst show ever. And I walked off stage and people came up to me and told me how much they really enjoyed the show. It was then that I learned that the test of engagement is not how much people are laughing or clapping, but when you pause, how much silence there is.
Beautiful.
Then you've got them in the palm of your hand, hanging out every word. Because people enjoy things differently. And if 5 people clap, you have applause. If 20 people laugh, you have laughter. But if you have a room of 1,000 people, every single person needs to participate for you to have silence. Right? And that is an incredibly powerful thing to know and learn when you are communicating with people. There are so many examples. You would have seen this in a job interview. Somebody will ask you a question. You will answer the question. There will be silence. You will feel the need to fill that silence. And you have just talked yourself out of a job after having given the perfect answer. Today, if I was to give you a social media parlance, right? When you keep posting online, right? And people like and they comment, that's your laughter and applause. But when you stop posting, who picks up the phone to call you up and check if you're okay?
Amazing.
Right? That's your silence online. That's the real test.
No, I think, building off on that, nobody ever listened their way out of a job. I think some of the foundational aspects of stand-up, number one, having the courage and grit to put yourself out there. Number two is the hustle that one needs to go through and the armor that one needs to put on. And all these 3 aspects are so important because leadership is not a popularity sport at the end of the day. You got to take the tough calls. You got to go in areas that you've not gone before. And just talk us through these 3 different areas.
Okay.
Work ethic.
We'll have to go one by one because my memory is terrible
absolutely,
and I forget.
Yeah.
Work ethic,
hustle, and thick skin.
Okay, keep bringing me back to that. When I started comedy in London, in my first 10 months, I did 250 shows.
Jeez.
Right? Over 3 years, I did 700 shows. I used to wake up every morning, well, not morning, late morning, 10:30, 11, cook one meal for myself at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, get into some comedian's car in London to drive to some city in the UK. I would be paying my share of petrol. I wasn't getting paid for any of these shows because I was a new act. I would get there to perform 5 minutes, between 5 and 10 minutes. Sometimes there were 300 people, sometimes 3 people had shown up. I wouldn't eat because I was nervous. Sometimes I couldn't afford the food if we weren't getting a free meal. I would get dropped off in the outskirts of London, pay my share of petrol. I would change 3 different night buses.
Wow.
Right. Sometimes waiting for 45 minutes in cold London winter. I couldn't afford a taxi. And I would get home at about 4:35 in the morning. I did this every single day for an entire year. At the end of that year, you have no money, no friends, no relationships, and no life. But every single comedy promoter in the country knows your name. So that's how you start from a work ethic point of view. Also, over those 3 years in London, I have spent over 2,000 hours in cars with comedians who had been doing comedy for between 10 and 25 years.
Amazing.
I saw how they prepared their shows. I saw how they were able to capture the attention of audiences where I may have struggled. Right? I saw how they analyzed their sets afterwards. I begged them to watch my show and give me feedback. That was comedy university right there.
100%.
So from a work ethic point of view, after a year of doing stand-up, I went broke. I used to work in the day and perform at night. I joined a recruitment firm. But even though I was working 8 hours a day and performing 10 minutes at night, in my head, I was a comedian. and the job was on the side.
Was on the side.
Right? So that is work ethic. What is the second question you had?
The work ethic and resilience. I mean,
resilience was the third one. There was something else you said.
Hustle.
The hustle. Oh my God, the hustle. In 9 months, I was doing shows in London that comedians who had been going for 3 years weren't. Why? This is one of the greatest lessons I've learned when it comes to marketing as a solopreneur or whatever the case might be. You are shit hot in this business for the 20 minutes right after you have nailed a gig. That's when you're hot. If I have a good gig, I walk off stage, I go to the promoter straight away. Did you like that? Yes, I did. Can I call you tomorrow morning and book the next slot?
Lovely.
Yeah, sure. Call him the first thing next morning, book a slot in. Right? Otherwise, you got to wait 6 months for the next slot. Right? I do that now in my shows. If I had a great gig, corporate show, after the show, I'm just hanging out with the crowd. And it's besides the fact that I like hanging out with people. I like meeting people. I remember once I got a manager who was with me for who was with me for all of 3 weeks. And he says, oh, when you go to a show, you need to be a star. You shouldn't be seen. And after you've done your show, you've got to, be visible for a little bit. I said, that's not who I am, right? But those 20 minutes straight after the show is when people come to you. We want your card. Can you come and do this here? Almost all my work I get today is from people who've seen me at shows.
Gotcha. Or
through referral. But 95% is people who've been at a show. When it comes to hustle, I still remember, like I said, I went broke after a year. I worked in a recruitment firm. I used to go to restaurants, and there were restaurants where, you can put your business card in. There's a lucky draw at the end or whatever. When nobody was looking, I would steal those business cards. I would go to the office. I would cold call people, place them in jobs and get a commission.
Whoa.
In those days, you didn't have the internet on your phone. When I was traveling, at the airports, you would have these business centers with 5 different terminals. I would go to every single terminal. I would open the browser. I would change the homepage to papacj.com.
Wow.
Even now, 19 years later, I will go to the Apple store, and when nobody's looking, I'll open up the iPad, I'll change the homepage. So yeah.
Oh, geez.
That's hustle. Your third question was on resilience. In comedy, you learn nothing from a good show. You walk off stage thinking, I'm the king. In a bad show, you get feedback every 15 seconds. Every 15 seconds, if they're not laughing, you're failing. Now, there is nothing worse than trying to make people laugh and getting 5 minutes of silence. If you don't have the experience or the expertise to adapt on the spot, you have to ask yourself on the way home, what if I'm ever again in the same country with a similar audience of a similar background? What can I do differently so I don't look like a fool? So for us, the only way to get better is to actually continuously fail and fail and fail and fail in different situations. I mean, today I've done about 3,000 shows in over 30 countries. I've done white audiences, black audiences, young audiences, old audiences, mixed audiences, and just learned how to adapt in each of those situations. And I've learned by first not being able to adapt. But of course, you do the groundwork. Today, if I'm doing a show in Singapore, I will spend, when I get there, my promoter will have the last 10 days of newspapers waiting for me, which I've told him to keep for me. I will look at what's going on. I will read about their history, their politics, their religion, their scandals. I will talk to the taxi driver. I will get his or her opinion on the same. When I start, my first 10 minutes is purely about them. Then I know I've got them. And then I can take them beyond their borders. Incidentally, this is one of the bits that I talk about when I'm running my communication session as well.
Lovely.
About how you customize content, what is powerful. And this is basically local content.
Sure.
How many examples have you seen somebody who's taken an advertisement that the same company is running in America and tried to plug it in India?
It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Amazing. I want to talk a little bit about heckling.
Okay. Bring it on, biatch.
How you definitely need to be prepared to be and to appear spontaneous, correct? There's a lot of craft
that is absolutely wrong.
All right.
How can you prepare to be spontaneous? It's the opposite.
All right.
Preparation and spontaneity are Complete opposite
Complete
ends of
opposites.
spectrum.
Okay. So if you're looking at, talking about, setting up and crafting your joke and your narrative and whatever, right? So a lot of prep that goes into it.
Yes.
And then a curveball gets swung across.
Okay.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, either you successfully put the heckler down or sometimes the heckler wins.
What?
Has there never been a case that a heckler has won?
Sure.
Of course.
I'll see, if a heckler gives me a good line,
Of course.
I'll give him a round of applause.
Yeah.
Get the order, and then I'll fucking destroy him. But I'll tell you what, the best example of dealing with heckling, the best way to give you an example, heckle me. Go on, heckle me. Assume I'm performing, heckle me.
All right. When's the comedy starting? When's the comedy starting?
Even your heckles are sad, man. You should stick to the coaching, yeah? Well, it started in your mama's bedroom when your daddy decided to come inside.
So now, which is where I was talking about, right? You have a set of put downs, which is...
This wasn't planned.
No, of course not. I'm just saying, through the years, there's so much of material that you've collected and whatever, right? And you, like Jimmy Carr, right? He deploys it at the right moment.
Yeah.
So where I'm getting to is for leaders to be able to shape shift, they also need to have a repertoire to begin with. And that's where I'm coming from. When you talk about connecting dots and collecting dots.
I disagree with you on this to a large extent.
Excellent.
Right? And I'll tell you why. Today what happens is that you can go to the Twitter handle of an organization and say, my underwear is dirty. And somebody will reply back to you and saying, thank you for your concern, sir. A customer service representative will come back to you soon.
Absolutely.
What is that? It's a stock put down. Right? The stock put downs on the comedy circuit have been around enough. Right? You need to listen to what they're saying and customize your response. That is what leadership is. Right? Leadership is not sending out a standard email.
Sure.
Oh, this is our policy. This is the way.
Sure.
Can you show them that you're actually listening to them? Right? Once they feel appreciated and heard, then you may still say this is the way our organization is going, which is why we can't deal with this right now. But you've got to listen. So similarly, when you heckle me, the best put down is something that is customized to your heckle.
100%.
Not a standard.
100%.
I've got standard lines. I can give you those. No problem.
Sure.
Yeah.
The route that I was taking or the journey that I was on is about storytelling.
Yes.
Is about expressing and leading the organization through a narrative. Now, if I'm not able to connect dots between various influences, which helps me connect with your head, connect with your heart, and if I don't have that repertoire, and if I try to, jab like Muhammad Ali, that might not work. That's what I'm talking about.
I agree with you on that completely.
That's what I'm
right. So business storytelling is another complete different art form and very important. But what you were talking about was heckling. So heckling is about responding. It's not about my pre-written story that I'm here to tell.
I'm saying, how do you build the muscle to handle repartee? How do you build the muscle to handle in the moment?
By doing it. By doing it, you're not going to get good at it unless you do it and do it and do it and do it and do it badly to start with. When you do it badly, you're like, oh man, the next time that happens, because it always happens. You get off stage, crap, I should have said this. But now you've got that in the bag for the next time. Right? That's how you build your
staircase with.
Yeah. But you've got to keep doing it.
Right? How many bad shows have you had?
Bad show? What's that? I'm kidding. No, tons, yeah. I've had tons of bad shows. They happen less now.
Sure.
But I have...
What's a bad show? Let's start with your definition of a bad show.
Oh, man. I did this show in Bombay once. And see, the other thing with stand-up is music can run in the background. For comedy, people have to shut up and listen.
Got it.
At a comedy club, people have come with the intention to listen to comedy. Sometimes you're thrown into a corporate show where people have come for the awards or to catch up with their pals or to have a drink. And no matter what you do, you cannot win. I was doing this show in Bombay once, and it was this massive award ceremony. The stage was, firstly, comedy needs to be intimate, ideally. Yeah? You want people close.
Yeah.
The stage was a good 30 feet high, 100 feet broad. The closest table was 50 feet away. There were about 12 tables of 10 people, of so to say, the VIPs. They hadn't had a single drink, right? So there were about, say, 200 people there, 20 tables. And behind them were about 450 people who were 6 drinks down. Oh my God. It was a nightmare. No matter what I did, there was nothing I could do to win.
So what happened? What happens? Smattered applause, silence, indifference, apathy?
No, at some point, it's just at that point, at a gig like that, see, that was different because the environment was against me.
Sure.
Right? And at that point, I probably didn't have the expertise and the experience to know how to deal with it. Right? At that time, because it's a corporate show and you're paid to do a certain amount of time, you just stand there, you vomit your lines out and you go off. But there are other shows where sometimes you just don't know how to work the crowd. Less so now. I'm talking, say, 15 years ago. And that's when you're just sweating. Your throat gets parched. You start talking faster. Your timing goes off because a punchline hasn't worked. You're like, oh, okay, they're going to laugh at the next one, right? And that doesn't work. Oh, they're going to love this next one. And you end up finishing 5 minutes early because you've just gone so rapidly through the whole thing. And they can see this happening to you. And if ever you see a show and there's complete silence and there's one person laughing at the back of the room, it's the other comedian. Because he's like, this fucker's just dying on his ass.
Yeah. But how often do you get good, actionable feedback from other comics? And how well do you take them?
See, very rarely now, because most of the shows that I'm doing, I'm performing alone.
Sure.
Right? I'm always open to feedback, but your greatest feedback will always come from the audience. If they're laughing, it's working. If they're not, you don't need another comedian to tell you, hey, they're not laughing. But what I do like and what I try and help other comics with as well is if I'm listening to somebody perform and these lines are called tags, so they have a line and suddenly you're like, hey, you know what? You could add this to that. It would give you just, another tag to the joke, another laugh. So that's always cool when you get a nice one from someone.
Nice. I think, CJ, we can talk about stand-up till the cows come home. But I'm also really interested.
What? How dare you talk about my mother like that? No more tea for them. I'm kidding. You better cut that out. Okay, my mom will kill me. Oh, by the way, I've got to tell you this story. Right now, sorry, mom, that was a joke, by the way. I was doing this gig in Singapore, right? And this college gig must be all of 20. Right? So we're having this, he wants to be the hero in front of his friends. So he's giving it a go and I'm putting him down. And at one point, he decides to say, can I use foul language?
Yeah, go for it.
At one point, he's like, I fucked your mom. So I said, how old are you, bro? So he says, I'm 22. So I said, my mom's 70. Right? I said, if my mom has shagged a 22-year-old, she's a hit amongst her friends. If you shagged a 70-year-old, I'm guessing even for you, that's a fucking upgrade.
I love it. Right? I love it.
So this interaction happens.
Bit, right?
Wait. Yeah. This interaction happens. Then I show my mom the video. Right? My mother watches this video. And at the end of it, she is offended. Why do you think she's offended?
I can't think of a funny enough reason.
No, just think of a regular reason. Why would my mom be offended? Why do you think?
What are you talking about, man? Talking about sex with a 22-year-old and, how can you talk about your mom like that?
Exactly. That's what any normal human being would think. She says, how dare you say I'm 70 years old? She's 69, right? And she's like, how dare you call me 70? No problem with banging my mom. Okay, mom, I take your point. So, yeah.
Hilarious, yeah. Talking about, stand-up and, it's a fascinating topic and there's so many layers that we can peel.
Yeah.
segue into executive coaching. How did that come up?
Wow, that was smooth. Not. How did coaching come? What a lot of people don't know is that between 2006 and 2007, I actually trained over 50 companies all over the globe. So when I went broke doing stand-up, the side hustle was, I hate the word hustle, but the side hustle at that point was coaching. So I've trained Accenture, Deutsche Bank in New York. I've trained Google, UBS, Nike in Europe, BBC, Universal Music in the UK, bunch of companies in Asia. So I trained over 50 companies across continents before that. So it was always a skill set that I had in the bag. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, you can't, as a company, you can't be paying for stand-up comedians when you're firing people, right?
Absolutely.
So that's when I said, let me focus a little bit more on the coaching bit. And in the last, say, 3 odd years, I've been publicizing the coaching bit a bit more because the comedy work comes anyway. But I think I've found this wonderful middle ground between, firstly, the areas where coaching and comedy overlap.
Beautiful.
Comedy is a great superpower when it comes to coaching. But I'm now doing both of them. In fact, today when a client calls me for an event, I ask them, I said, what's the event? And depending on what the event is, I can host the show. I can do stand-up comedy, which I can do clean or dirty. I can customize it. I can roast people if it's an internal show. I can interview the CEO. I can write the entire communication for the event. I can moderate a panel. I can prepare the panelists in advance. There are just so many ways in which I can add value. I can run a motivational speaking session. I can do a learning session. I can, I've had clients who, after having a 2-day thing with them, have had me come on board to do business development.
Wow.
They have actually offered me retainers. I said, listen, I don't want a retainer because you'll think I work for you and call me to the office.
Got it.
But it's just that I have such a broad network that I'm able to connect the right people together.
So one of the things that you do, and I'm really piqued my interest, is communication, Comedian's Guide to Communication and Communication Strategy. Walk us through the main pillars of that.
It's very simple. What I do is, it's just a 3-part session. Part 1, here is this wonderful story from stand-up comedy. Ha ha ha, wasn't that enjoyable?
Sure.
Part 2 is where I remove the lesson from the context. Then I'm literally saying, why did I tell you this story? Right? Here's the lesson. Then I say, okay, now how can we apply this in your context? So I'll give you a couple of examples.
Sure.
One of the best pieces of advice I got in comedy is that it's very important for you to grow in the dark. When you hit the limelight, you don't have the freedom to screw up. So if I'm performing at the Sydney Opera House, which I have done, I can't afford to have a bad show.
Correct.
When you want to succeed all the time, what do? You play safe. I know this works, let me stick to it. Right? As a result, you don't experiment, you don't take risks, you don't innovate, you don't grow, you stagnate. What is the comedian solution to this problem? We go to small open mic nights. Only 30 people in the room, try something new, see what works, see what doesn't. The stuff that doesn't work, try it around differently until you get it right. Then you take it into the larger show. My question to you as an organization, where is your open mic night? Right? Where are you going to experiment? Which products, which markets, which customers, which price points? Right? So in a keynote, I would just talk about this. In a workshop, I will send them away for half an hour after this to talk about these things. So at the end of it, they've literally got a whole plan on the wall, which they can go and execute. Another wonderful story I say is that when my parents come for a show, when my dad comes for a show, he's not looking at me, he's looking at the audience to see how they're reacting. When my mom comes for a show, it does not matter how good the show is. I will walk off stage. The first thing she will tell me is all the things that I've done wrong. Right? And I tell her, Mom, the audience has had a good time. I have had a good time. Right? Let me enjoy the moment. Can you please tell me tomorrow? But she cannot help herself. As much as I hate it, nothing helps me grow and improve as much as that.
Wow.
My question to you as an organization, in your organization, who's Papa CJ's dad? Who's watching your audience, whether it's your customers or your employees, to see how they're reacting to what you're putting out there? Who's Papa CJ's mom? Who's telling you the things that you need to hear but don't like to hear?
Yeah.
There's that wonderful story about Akbar and Birbal. And they're having lunch one day and Bengan is served. And Akbar said, "Arey, this is delicious." And Birbal said, Jahanpana, Bengan, what a great vegetable. It's so tasty. Anyway, a few days go past and they're having lunch again. And this time again, Bengan is served. This time Akbar says, I didn't really enjoy this. He says, Jahanpana, terrible vegetable. It has no nutritional value. So Akbar is like, boss, where is your integrity? Last week I praised it, you were saying nice things, now you're saying all this. Birbal says, Jahanpana, I work for you. I don't work for the Bengan. Bengan mere ko promotion nahi dega. Now why do I tell this story? I tell them in the workshop then. I said, you are the CEO of the company. Nobody wants to come here and tell you things that you don't like to hear.
Gotcha.
Have you created a culture? Have you created enough psychological safety for people to tell you the truth? Because if you haven't, you're operating blind. So, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Here's this wonderful story. Then here's the lesson. And this is how you apply it in your context. That's the entire bit. Like we spoke about earlier, what I'm telling you is not new. It's the how.
The how. Yeah.
Right? Which is entertaining and engaging and allows you to. And it's not like leaders don't know these answers.
Of course not.
They all know these answers.
Absolutely.
You just force them to wear that lens because they have taken the time out to sit with you. And if you're entertaining and engaging enough, they will wear that lens. And hopefully when they look through it, they will find the answers for themselves.
No, it's very interesting because it resonates a lot. When I have conversations with CXOs on, should they work with me or another coach and whatever.
Yeah.
And I tell them, look, I'm a culmination of some of my experiences. And this is what my work journey has traversed. This is my growth as a human being.
Yeah.
This is my experiments with all these things. And at the end of the day, it's a potpourri of all these experiences, which has resulted in me being able to take your coaches on this particular journey. Yeah. This is what I can give you exposure to at this point in time. And eventually, if it strikes a chord and, the right mix is met with them, and then I start working with these coaches. Yeah.
Also, I find that, when you start working with an organization, your first job is to listen. I don't like, I sometimes go into meetings with clients and say, what can you do for us? Like, no, first you tell me what are your key goals and what are your key challenges.
Absolutely.
I would rather start the conversation there. But then they say, no, you tell us, So then the hook that works is for you to share the insights, So for example, I've found almost every organization I work with right now, or I've seen, has a few key challenges that they're all facing. Number one, people are incentivized vertically, but you want them to collaborate horizontally.
Brilliant.
That is not happening anywhere. The second one is the guys who should be thinking about where this organization is going in the next 2 years or 5 years are so focused on delivering the numbers for the next quarter that nobody is steering the ship.
QSQT.
Qayamat se qayamat tak, quarter se quarter tak. Right? Then the other thing that happens is very often, and it's not spoken about openly, but the leaders are not on the same page on the priorities of the organization.
Sure.
Right? And they're not willing to admit it. But when you do the anonymous interviews in advance of a 2-day strategy offsite, and you get there on the morning of the first day and say, here are the anonymous results of what you have said. Poof. And suddenly they, oh my God, the others are thinking the same thing as well, but they haven't said it and neither have I. Then we're like, okay, now which of these bits would you like to prioritize and focus on? Then what happens is, even if you have clearly articulated the strategy, either it has not been communicated to the bottom level, and even if it has been communicated, that person doesn't know what they need to do differently in their day-to-day jobs to actually execute the strategy. The other big challenge with all these coaching assignments and offsites is follow-through, right? You come for these 2 days, you have a great time, and then nothing happens afterwards. If you don't build that in, the second you're like, oh, what should we do? No, fucker, what will you do? Right? Not we. We means nothing's going to happen. Right?
Diffused responsibility.
And the other thing that happens, and I've seen it at the senior most levels in the largest organizations, there is no succession planning. Why is there no succession planning? Because that guy, even right at the top, if I make myself replaceable, what is my growth path? What will I do then? If you don't solve that problem, you're not going to have that second layer. right? So those are some of the things that I see going on, which when I have that conversation resonates with people. And the other thing that I think is really important, I mean, frankly, I genuinely believe if every manager can speak to every direct report of theirs once a month for 20 minutes with no agenda, right? That's half your problem solved. Nobody has the time.
Excellent.
And also aligning the goals of the individual to those of the organization, right? Very simple. I'm simplifying it. You ask somebody, okay, what are your dreams? Right? Oh, sir, I want to hit my target. No, what are your dreams? I want to buy my mother a house. What do you need to be able to buy her a house? I need this amount of money. What's going to help you get to that amount of money? Sir, if I hit this target, okay, what is coming in the way? X is coming in the way. What can I do to help? That's it, as simple as that. Now that guy is no longer working for your sales target. He's working for his mother's house.
For his mother's house, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, of course, I'm oversimplifying it.
No, but the point is very simple. If I can connect the dots, or if an organization leader can connect the dots between where the organization is heading and how is it taking the leader or the individual on his journey, I think that makes a lot of sense, right?
I think it was Branson who said, if you care for your people, everything else is taken care of.
I think that's
right?
lovely, right? Because that's another conversation, because different leadership philosophies. Branson believes in putting employees first. Bezos believes in putting the customer first. And both of them are equally successful. But I guess it all boils down to your individual template of what it means to be a good leader and what it means to be a great success, and what does success mean to you as a human being.
This is where it comes back to authenticity, right? Because the other mistake that leaders make is, this is what you should do. you guys, right? Nobody is leading by example. People are. Right? So you have got to be the kind of, when you teach branding, right? Personal branding, right? You talk about unity. You have to be able to live your brand. You can't 200%. Say your one thing and then do something else.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge with leaders, right? Unless you can live it.
CJ, another thing is I work with a lot of CXOs who are on their way to becoming global leaders of various organizations. And it's heartening to see a lot of Indian CEOs who are heading global organizations now, and hopefully that number will grow up. If not for anything else, I'm just proud that there are more Indians representing, biggish organizations.
Yeah.
So there are some areas where they reach out, and I know that this is what is holding them back from ascending onto the world stage.
Yeah.
And you work around the globe with leaders. What do you think we need to double down upon at this point in time as leaders?
From the point of view of going from local to global.
Correct.
Just to clarify the question. I think the number one thing is culture. Right? And understanding how different cultures operate. Right? Today, if a German calls an Indian guy, hey, so what time should we catch up tomorrow? And what does the Indian guy say? Oh, 9:30, 10. What do you mean 9:30, 10? Is it 9:30 or is it 10? Right? 9:30, 10. Not happening. Right? Last year, I was coaching a very senior American executive, and he was working with Europeans. Right? And a part of the coaching was to help get his mindset into how you work with Europeans.
Gotcha.
Right? Because he was going into some meetings sometimes with a one-night stand. Boom, boom, boom. Gotcha. I'm out of here.
Gotcha.
I was like, no, this is Europe. You got to wine them. You got to dine them. You got to, So there's, you have to know, it's like stand-up comedy. Right? When I perform in America to Europe to Southeast Asia, it's very different. And your jokes may not be different, but how you deliver them, how you work the audience, that's where the craft is, So I think a lot of it is understanding how to work with people from different cultures.
Great.
And how to get them to work with each other.
Brilliant.
So that's what I believe.
Cross-cultural nuances, deeply invested in figuring out their lens on how they look at success, how they look at life, how they look at work, and figuring out how to meet them at that point. That is one.
For me, it's almost...
What else?
Almost everything comes down to the people. Comes down to the people, to the culture, right? If you look at competing companies, you can have the same strategy. You can have...
I think this is more in the area of, for lack of a better word, more right brain stuff than the left brain stuff. Because from all the coaches that I've worked with, very senior Indian CXOs, we are great on strategy. We're great on thriving in chaos. We're great on working in ambiguous environments.
Yeah.
We're great at seeing beyond the curve because it's a part of our ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
But what we might not be great at is the ability to drive a stake in the ground and drive purposeful action through great communication.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how much of that you've come across. We might tend to waffle a bit. We might tend to...
See, we occasionally tend to people please.
Yeah.
Right? And we're afraid of conflict. And we're not happy to put the conflicting stuff on the table. Right? I remember, and I'm talking about 40 years ago, my dad used to head marketing for a tea company. And he had gone to the US for a marketing trip, and he came back, and about 6 weeks later, the potential client in America complained to his boss. Right? What was the complaint? That they were talking about doing a deal, and this guy said, "So are we going to do this?" And he says, "I'll think about it and I'll come back to you." Right? Now he knew he wasn't going to do it. As Indians, we don't like saying, "No, I'm not going to work with you."
There you go. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, as Indians, we know when somebody says, "I'll think about it and get back to you," nothing going to happen.
We know what's going to happen.
But the American guy was like, "What's going on, bro? You said you'll think about it. Why have you not thought about it and come back to you?" Oh, I've got to tell you one more thing, by the way. Wonderful story from my dad. So he was heading marketing for a company called Goodrich Group Limited, tea company.
Yeah.
One of his roles was duties was to try and get as many retailers as possible to stock his brand of tea.
Gotcha.
I'm talking, this is the 80s. He hired an army of housewives, about 50 housewives, who at random times of the day would go to these shops and say, "Goodrich ki chai hai?"
Lovely.
And when the guy said, "No, we don't have, why don't you take
Now
Tata
I know
tea?
where the hustle gene comes from.
Why don't you take Tata tea?" This housewife said, "No,
it's okay.
when
I
you
want
have Goodrich now,
Goodrich
then
really."
I'll come back." Now this guy, for like 3 weeks, randomly these women were coming and asking for this. 3 weeks later, the salesman would go and say, "Would you like to stock our chai?"
Yeah. Sure. You know how recent, relevant this story is? Aman Gupta, founder of Boat, he said the same story. There was a retailer in Khan Market and he had said his mum, his sister, "Acha, Boat speakers hai kya?"
My dad was doing this in the 80s.
It is amazing. Lovely. I think it goes on to say basic principles don't change, right? They're very, very simple, sound principles. Great. So anything else? What else do you think we can do better as coaches and as practitioners who work in equipping senior leaders? Because I firmly believe this is not just India's year, but this could be India's decade and maybe India's century. And that can happen only when we smoothen the corners of the way we present our leaders.
See, I think the number one thing we can do is to listen. Right? They know how to do their jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And listen and customize our responses. There are too many coaches who also, when they take on somebody as a coachee, they know in advance, I'm going to make him do this psychological test. I'm going to make him do this.
Yeah.
What's the point? You're just putting them through a process without customizing to
and
what their needs are.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Listen to them. For the longest time, I've had this concept, which I call the chief caffeine officer concept. It should probably be chief conversation officer, so it's a bit more healthier. If you look at your senior leaders today, they have nobody to talk to. You cannot show weakness at home.
Yep.
You cannot show weakness at work. Your friends don't have the time.
No.
They have their own lives. Who do you talk to? Right? And that's the role that I want to fill. Like, I literally want to say, you know what, just buy 50 hours of my time. Anybody in your office can pick up the phone or book a slot with me.
Beautiful.
I can be a coach. I can be a comedian. I can be a consultant. I can be an ideator. I can be a friend, But that's what we really need. We need chief listening officers.
I was just about to say that.
Or whether you call it listening or compassion or empathy or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And when you have somebody who listens to 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 different people, you will be able to spot patterns. And then say, you know what, I think you have a problem with this organization because this is what multiple people are feeling. It's confidential, it's anonymous. But I think there's a real role for that. If we listen to CEOs, if CEOs listen to their people
200%.
more, I think that's where the real power comes.
There's definite hope because there are CEOs of global organizations and of late some Indian organizations who go on what is officially called listening tours.
Yeah. And I think Indra Nooyi did this,
Indra
right?
Nooyi, yeah. So beautiful and so important not to go there and say, I've got a solution, I've got a quick fix. No, man, just goddamn, just listen.
Yeah.
And so much of power in that listening, right? And all the stuff that he spoke about was essentially what triggered my journey into becoming a coach as a practitioner.
Yeah.
Because I was going through pretty much existential pangs in terms of I was on my way to becoming a leader, but I knew that I was not in a happy place within my heart.
But you're still a leader, my friend.
Of course I am. And, in conversations with my other colleagues, I realized that there needed to be a safe space which didn't exist at that time. And I, like scratching your own itch kind of a thing, which is when I decided to go the whole log, get certified, become a coach and,
But Jay, the other problem I find is that, and this happens especially in Asia and definitely in India, is that very often we are chasing a definition of success that has been defined by somebody else.
Beautiful. Lovely.
Right? By society or by whoever it is.
Amazing.
Oh, he's doing so well. What the fuck does that even mean? Right? You're in this fancy office, earning lots of money, working 14 hours a day. You're miserable. But you're doing so well.
You're doing so well.
Right? Which I think is so wrong. If you think about the whole process of coaching, what is it? The very basic straw man of coaching. This is my current reality. This is my future ideal self. I'm going to use my strengths to get from here to there. Step one is current reality. Are you aware of what your patterns are, how you're behaving, what your values are, right? Today, I could be sitting in Los Angeles shooting a sitcom, but every morning I go to my local cafe and I spend an hour with my parents and have a coffee with them.
That's a life well lived.
There is no amount of success or fame or anything you could give me that is of greater value than that, So are you living your values? I have got so many people, potential clients, worst part, to quit their jobs, which is not good for me at all.
No, that's one of my tenets with an organization, right? And, I have a contract with the organization saying that, look, the coachee is my mandate. He's that's the contract. It's not even like church and state. There is such a thick wall that you will never break in. And one of the things that I get signed in my agreements is in the course of the conversation, if he decides to leave the job, because for whatever goes,
you still gotta pay me.
No, 100%. Because I'm being true to what coaching is, and I'm on his part of the ring, and I'm in his corner of the ring. But CJ, very quickly, since you spoke about success, I need to tell you about this conversation I had with my 12-year-old about a couple of weeks ago. I just picked him up from his MMA class, and there were a couple of his other friends, and I dropped them to their place, and my son Hriday was telling me, Dad, they have like this really lavish house. I'm like, wow, okay, what is lavish according to you? Oh, they've got this like backyard which is like this, and they've got televisions. Both the brothers, they have televisions in their houses. There's a television in the parents' bedroom, in the living room, and all of that. I said, oh, all right, okay. I said, Hriday, would you want to move into a house like that? We could move into a bigger house. Like, no, I'm absolutely okay where we are. I love it. I'm like, what do you love about it? Like, I can see you, mom, and, we pass each other, and I think that's important. I said, but Hriday, isn't this what success kind of looks like? A big house? He said, no. Success is what you consider success as.
Beautiful.
There is no set pattern. If more money is success for you, that's success for you. If having a better body is success for you, that's success for you. If having more friends with you is success, that's success for you. And I was
amazing,
at 12 years old.
Your son has picked up such great values from his mother.
Kapila, that's not true, because you know what you told me after that. It's all you, Jay.
Yeah, right. No, but there's a...
No, but this idea of success, seriously, that's a part of... That's something that, is it a malaise? Is it like following the lemmings?
I think
what is the
I think it's getting better with time. It's getting better with time. Incidentally, there's one line I wanted to tell you, which I've always loved when you spoke about this person's house. Is पहले घर छोटे होते थे, पर दिल बड़े होते थे.
Correct.
अब घर बड़े हो गए, दिल छोटे हो गए.
By the way, this is empirically proven by a researcher called Bruce McKibben, who studied the average amount of floor space and the number of friends that Americans had. And it's inversely proportional over the last 30 years.
Because when we were growing up, friends and everybody came. You put gaddas on the floor, just mattresses on the floor, and everybody slept in the same room. Now everybody needs their own room and their own space, and you can't,
And about connecting dots. No, sorry, CJ. I'm
please,
talking to you. My neurons are also firing extra hard, right? There were two.
Oh, that's what we're calling it now, is it?
Well, that's what the kids call it these days. So there are two clips. One is Jackie Shroff talking about his mother, and
I've only seen one Jackie Shroff clip, right?
That's talking
and in that he's talking about his Mossy.
That's talking. We are not going there. And he's talking about his mum, and he's saying, we had a small house, and if mum had a cough or something, we'd all check in with her.
Yeah.
I got this big house and whatever, and she passed away, and I wasn't there. Big house, all that.
Yeah.
Completely different, unrelated. Shivaji Ganeshan once had a heart attack, and to go and meet him was a Tamil director called Bharati Raja. And he asked Bharati Raja, how many houses do you have? Anna, I have 3 houses. Oh, okay. Try and stay in the smallest one. He's like, why? I've got 3 big ass houses, my small house. He said, look, I was on bed and I was about to have an attack, and I was calling Prabhu, who's his son. I was calling Ram, his other son. The house is so big, nobody came. Knew. My wife was around. She had to come and give me coffee. Yeah. If she had not come at that time, I was out.
Yeah.
He's saying, what's the point of having such a big house when people closest to you are not near? And Jackie also said it very beautifully.
Yeah.
When you can't hear them breathe, when you can't hear them sigh, it's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But I'm sure that wasn't Jackie's first take.
Unlike the other one.
But actually, if I was to think about principles with which at least I try and live my life, or advice that I would give younger kids, there are 3 things that come to mind. The first one is financial independence is the only independence. Right? Doesn't matter who you are, you need to be able to earn your own keep. The second one is there is no right way. There is no right path. It is just your path. So you've got to chase a definition of success that you are able to define for yourself. And the third one is just be kind. You're here for a short time. If you can be good to people. And kindness is a superpower. Right? From a career point of view, the most successful people I have seen are people who are good to other people. Right? Today, 80% of people can do the job. People will work with you because they want to work with you. Are you that person?
Fantastic. CJ, that was completely nailing it. What a roller coaster of a conversation. Thank you so much, my friend.
It's my pleasure.
It was a fantastic conversation with you. I look forward to circling back to you.
Oh my God, circle back and I'll check out the lingo, baby. Boom.
Thank you so much, brother.
My pleasure.
Appreciate this.
Cheers.